Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey through the corridors of time. Tonight, we'll step softly into the world of medieval peasants, those countless souls who formed the backbone of medieval society, yet whose daily struggles and quiet triumphs are often overlooked in the grand narratives of kings and knights. Imagine yourself settling into the warmth of your bed, surrounded by the comfort of modern life central heating, electric lights, abundant food just steps away in your kitchen. As you drift into relaxation, let your mind wander back nearly 1,000 years to a time when survival itself was an art form, when the approach of winter meant not just discomfort, but genuine peril. In this tranquil exploration, we'll discover how ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen, mothers, and children navigated the harsh realities of medieval life. We'll walk through their daily routines, feel the rhythm of their seasons, and understand the ingenious ways they adapted to a world that demanded resilience at every turn. Tonight's journey will take us through 4 gentle chapters of medieval peasant life. First, we'll immerse ourselves in the daily struggles and small victories of a typical peasant family as winter approaches. Then we'll follow the remarkable story of a specific individual who rose from peasant origins to leave their mark on history. Our third segment will explore the mysterious, archaeological remnants of peasant culture and the fascinating rituals that sustained these communities through their darkest hours. Finally, we'll contrast the peasant experience with that of the nobility, understanding how these two worlds existed side by side, each dependent on the other. So settle back, let your breathing slow, and prepare to experience history not as a series of dates and battles, but as the lived experience of real people facing real challenges with remarkable ingenuity and quiet courage. Daily life immersion, the rhythm of survival. The first gray light of dawn filters through the gaps in the wattle and daub walls of a peasant cottage somewhere in 13th century England. The air inside is thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and the close quarters of a family who has shared this single room through the long, dark months of winter. Imagine yourself awakening on a straw-filled mattress, covered by rough woolen blankets that smell of lanolin and the faint mustiness of sheep. The fire in the central hearth has burned low during the night, and the chill seeps through the earthen floor and into your bones. This is not the sharp, clean cold of modern refrigeration, but the persistent, all-encompassing cold of a world without central heating, where warmth is a precious commodity that must be carefully maintained and jealously guarded. The peasant family, let's call them the Millers, begins their day not with the luxury of choice, but with the necessity of survival. Thomas Miller, the head of the household, rises first, his joints stiff from a lifetime of agricultural labor. The sound of his movements, the creak of the wooden bed frame, the rustle of straw, the soft thud of his feet on the packed earth floor, creates a gentle rhythm that has remained unchanged for generations. His first task is to coax life back into the dying embers of the fire. This is no simple matter of striking a match or flipping a switch. Thomas must carefully blow on the remaining coals, adding small twigs and dried moss until the flames catch. The fire is the heart of the household. It provides warmth, light, and the means to cook what little food they have. Letting it die completely would mean precious time lost in rekindling it, time that could mean the difference between a warm meal and a cold one on a day when calories are desperately needed. As the flames begin to dance and cast their warm glow across the walls, Alice Miller, Thomas's wife, stirs from her sleep. Her day begins with the assessment of their stores. How much grain remains? How many turnips are left in the root cellar? Whether there are enough dried peas to make a proper pottage. These calculations are made with the precision of a modern accountant, for a mistake could mean hunger before the next harvest. The Miller children, young Edmund, perhaps 8 years old, and his sister Margot, barely 6, wake to a world where childhood is a luxury they cannot afford. Edmund's first responsibility is to check on the family's most precious possessions, their pig, their few chickens, and if they are fortunate, a cow or goat. These animals represent not just food, but economic security. The pig, fattened through the summer and autumn, will provide meat for the winter months. The chickens offer eggs, a reliable source of protein that can mean the difference between malnutrition and survival. The cow or goat provides milk, which can be consumed fresh or transformed into cheese that will last through the lean months. Picture Edmund stepping out into the sharp morning air, his breath forming small clouds that dissipate quickly in the wind. The animals shelter little more than a lean structure of wood, and thatch is attached to the family's cottage. This arrangement serves multiple purposes. The animal's body heat helps warm the human dwelling, and the close proximity allows for constant monitoring of these vital resources. As Edmund scatters grain for the chickens and checks the water trough, you can imagine the satisfaction he feels when he finds an egg in the straw. This simple discovery represents far more than a modern child finding a toy. It is a small victory against the constant threat of hunger, a sign that the family's careful management of their resources is paying off. Meanwhile, inside the cottage, Alice begins the daily ritual of preparing food. The medieval peasant diet was monotonous by modern standards, but it was carefully designed to provide maximum nutrition from minimal resources. The basis of most meals was pottage, a thick porridge made from whatever grains, vegetables, and occasionally meat were available. Today, Alice might add some of the dried peas, a handful of turnips from the root cellar, and perhaps a small piece of bacon from the pig that was slaughtered in the early autumn. The process of making pottage is meditative, requiring patience and attention. The ingredients must be added in the correct order and proportion, stirred regularly to prevent burning, and seasoned with whatever herbs Alice has managed to dry and preserve from the summer garden. The scent of the cooking food fills the small cottage, creating a sense of comfort and anticipation that helps offset the harsh realities of their existence. As the family gathers around the fire to share their morning meal, imagine the conversation that might take place. Thomas discusses the day's work, perhaps repairing a section of fence that was damaged by the autumn storms, or checking the fields for signs of pest damage. Alice mentions that she needs to visit the manor house to fulfill her family's labor obligations, for the millers, like most peasants, are bound to the land and must provide a certain number of days of work for their lord each year. This system, known as feudalism, defines every aspect of peasant life. The millers do not own their land. They hold it in exchange for their labor and a portion of their harvest. This arrangement provides them with protection and a place to live, but it also means that their time is never entirely their own. The lord of the manor can demand their labor during critical times, often just when their own fields need the most attention. After the morning meal, the family scatters to their various tasks. Thomas heads to the fields, where winter wheat needs to be checked and protected from foraging animals. The medieval agricultural system was based on a 3-field rotation: one field planted with wheat or rye, one with oats or barley, and one left fallow to restore its fertility. This system maximized the productivity of the land while maintaining its long-term viability. Alice's day might take her to the lord's manor, where she joins other peasant women in tasks such as spinning, weaving, or food preparation. These communal work sessions serve a dual purpose. They fulfill the peasants' obligations to their lord while providing opportunities for social interaction and the sharing of knowledge and gossip that helps bind the community together. Young Margot, despite her age, has her own responsibilities. She might help her mother with simple tasks like gathering kindling or feeding the chickens, but she also serves as an extra pair of eyes and ears for the family. In a world where resources are scarce and threats are constant, every family member must contribute to the household's survival. The rhythm of peasant life is dictated not by clocks, which are rare and expensive, but by the natural cycles of day and night, seasons and weather. The peasant farmer can read the sky like a book, understanding the subtle signs that indicate whether the day will bring rain, frost, or the precious gift of sunshine. This knowledge, passed down through generations, is as vital to survival as any modern technology. As the day progresses, imagine the constant calculations that occupy Thomas's mind. The winter wheat is growing, but slowly will it mature before the late spring frosts? The family's food stores are adequate for now, but what if the winter is longer than usual? The pig is healthy, but what if it falls ill before butchering time? These are not idle worries, but practical concerns that require constant attention and planning. The afternoon brings different challenges. Alice returns from her duties at the manor and immediately begins preparing for the evening meal. The process is time-consuming and requires careful resource management. Water must be fetched from the well, a task that requires strength and endurance, especially when the well is located some distance from the cottage. Fuel for the fire must be gathered and conserved. Wood is precious, and the family cannot afford to waste it. The evening meal is similar to the morning's pottage, but Alice might add different ingredients based on what she has been able to gather or trade during the day. Perhaps she has exchanged some eggs for a small piece of cheese, or traded some of her spinning for a handful of dried herbs. These small transactions form the backbone of the medieval economy, a complex web of relationships and obligations that bind the community together. As darkness falls, and in the medieval world, darkness is absolute in a way that modern people rarely experience, the family gathers once again around the fire. This is the time for storytelling, for sharing the day's experiences, and for passing down the accumulated wisdom of generations. Edmund might practice his letters if he is fortunate enough to receive any education, or more likely, he might learn practical skills like woodworking or basic metalwork from his father. The fire provides the only light in the cottage, casting dancing shadows on the walls and creating an intimate atmosphere that draws the family together. The conversations that take place around the medieval hearth are not so different from those around modern dinner tables. Discussions of the day's events, plans for tomorrow, worries about the future, and the small joys and sorrows that make up daily life. But always, underneath these ordinary conversations, runs the constant awareness of vulnerability. The peasant family lives at the mercy of forces beyond their control, whether disease, war, and the whims of their social superiors. This awareness creates a kind of stoic resilience, a determination to find joy and meaning in small things, and a deep appreciation for the simple fact of survival. As the evening progresses and the fire burns lower, the family prepares for sleep. The beds are not the comfortable mattresses of modern times, but simple straw-filled pallets that provide basic comfort and warmth. The family sleeps close together, sharing body heat and finding comfort in each other's presence. The sounds of the night, the wind through the thatch, the settling of the wooden beams, the occasional call of a night bird create a familiar symphony that lulls them towards sleep. But even in sleep, the peasant cannot entirely escape the concerns of survival. Alice might wake in the night to check on a sick child, or Thomas might rise to ensure that the fire hasn't died completely. These small vigilances, barely conscious, represent the constant attention that survival demands in a world without modern conveniences. As our imaginary day in the Miller household comes to an end, we begin to understand the complex rhythm of peasant life. It is a life of constant work and careful planning, of small pleasures and persistent fears, of deep community bonds and individual resilience. The medieval peasant family survived not through luck or chance, but through a sophisticated understanding of their environment, a careful management of their resources, and an unshakable commitment to the welfare of their community. The daily routine we have followed, the careful tending of the fire, the preparation of food, the management of animals, the fulfillment of feudal obligations represents just one day in a cycle that repeats itself throughout the year, with variations dictated by the seasons and the demands of agricultural life. Each day brings its own challenges and its own small victories, creating a tapestry of experience that is both monotonous and endlessly varied. In the quiet comfort of your modern bed, you can perhaps begin to appreciate the remarkable achievement that peasant survival represents. These were not simple people living simple lives, but skilled practitioners of the art of survival. Individuals who faced enormous challenges with ingenuity, courage, and an indomitable will to persevere. Segment 2. The remarkable journey of William de Montfort, from peasant to history. As we settle deeper into our exploration of medieval peasant life, let us turn our attention to one extraordinary individual whose story illuminates the possibilities and limitations of social mobility in the medieval world. His name was William de Montfort, though he was not born with that noble surname. He entered the world around 1205 as simply William, the son of a peasant farmer in the village of Ashwell in Hertfordshire, England. Picture, if you will, a young boy not unlike Edmund Miller from our earlier story, but one whose destiny would take him far from the familiar rhythms of agricultural life. William's early years were spent in circumstances nearly identical to those we have already explored. The same small cottage, the same struggles with cold and hunger, the same careful management of meager resources. Yet from these humble beginnings would emerge a man who would serve kings, influence the course of English law, and leave his mark on the very foundations of medieval society. William's transformation began with an event that might seem unremarkable to modern eyes, but represented a profound opportunity in the medieval world. He learned to read. In an age when literacy was largely confined to the clergy and the highest nobility, the ability to read and write was a passport to a different kind of life. A village priest, Father Benedict, noticed young William's quick mind and retentive memory during the brief religious instruction that even peasant children received. Imagine William at the age of 10, sitting in the dim interior of the village church, his rough woolen tunic a stark contrast to the ornate vestments of the priest. The musty scent of old parchment and burning candles fills the air as Father Benedict patiently teaches him to recognize letters, to sound out words, to understand the meaning behind the mysterious marks on the page. For William, each newly mastered word represents not just knowledge, but freedom from the endless cycle of agricultural labor that has defined his family's existence for generations. The priest's instruction extends beyond simple literacy. William learns the basics of Latin, the language of the church and of educated discourse throughout medieval Europe. He memorizes prayers and psalms, but more importantly, he begins to understand the complex theological and philosophical ideas that underpin medieval society. This education, rudimentary by modern standards, places him in a rarefied category among his contemporaries. As William reaches adolescence, his exceptional abilities come to the attention of the local lord, Sir Geoffrey de Clare. The medieval world, for all its rigid social hierarchies, occasionally provided opportunities for advancement based on merit. Sir Geoffrey, a man of some learning himself, recognizes that William's combination of intelligence and humble origins might make him valuable as a clerk or administrator. The feudal system, while constraining, also created needs for educated men who could manage complex estates, conduct correspondence, and handle the increasingly sophisticated legal and financial affairs of the nobility. At the age of 15, William leaves his family's cottage for the first time in his life, walking the dusty roads to Sir Geoffrey's manor house. The journey, perhaps only a few miles, represents a crossing between worlds as dramatic as any ocean voyage. The manor house, with its stone walls, glass windows, and multiple rooms, must have seemed like a palace to a boy accustomed to a single-room cottage shared with his entire family. William's new life as a clerk introduces him to the intricate workings of medieval administration. He learns to keep detailed records of the manor's agricultural production, to track the labor obligations of peasant families, and to manage the complex web of feudal relationships that bind the estate together. His days are spent hunched over parchment, carefully copying documents, recording transactions, and drafting correspondence in both Latin and the emerging vernacular English. The work is meticulous and demanding, requiring not just literacy, but also a keen understanding of law, custom, and human nature. William must learn to navigate the delicate relationships between lord and peasant, between church and state, between local custom and royal decree. His humble origins, rather than being a hindrance, prove to be an advantage. He understands the peasant mindset in a way that his noble-born colleagues cannot, and this understanding makes him valuable as a mediator and problem solver. As William's reputation for competence and discretion grows, he attracts the attention of higher authorities. Medieval England is a complex patchwork of competing jurisdictions, royal courts, church courts, and local manorial courts, all claim authority over different aspects of life. A skilled administrator who can navigate these overlapping systems is a valuable commodity, and William's services are increasingly in demand. By his mid-20s, William has progressed from simple clerk to steward, managing entire estates for absent lords. His responsibilities now include not just record keeping, but also the practical administration of justice, the organization of agricultural labor, and the complex negotiations involved in feudal politics. He develops a reputation for fairness and efficiency, qualities that are rare and precious in a world where corruption and incompetence are common. The turning point in William's career comes during a dispute over land rights between his lord and a neighboring baron. The case involves complex questions of inheritance law, feudal obligation, and royal prerogative. William's deep understanding of both legal precedent and practical politics allows him to craft a solution that satisfies all parties while avoiding the costly and destructive warfare that such disputes often provoked. This success brings William to the attention of the royal court itself. King Henry III, struggling to maintain order in a realm troubled by baronial unrest and administrative inefficiency, is always in need of capable administrators. William's combination of legal knowledge, practical experience, and humble origins makes him an ideal candidate for royal service. Unlike the great nobles who might have their own political ambitions, William's loyalty is assured by his complete dependence on royal favor. William's entry into royal service marks the final stage of his remarkable transformation. He is granted lands and a coat of arms, taking the name de Montfort for one of his new holdings. The peasant boy who once worried about having enough firewood for the winter now commands resources that would have seemed unimaginable in his youth. Yet his success is built not on birth or inheritance, but on the careful accumulation of knowledge, skill, and reputation. As a royal administrator, William plays a crucial role in the development of English law and government. He helps to codify legal procedures, establish consistent administrative practices, and create the bureaucratic systems that will eventually evolve into modern government. His work on legal reform, drawing on his deep understanding of how law affects ordinary people, contributes to the gradual transformation of medieval England from a collection of competing feudal territories into a unified kingdom governed by consistent laws. The irony of William's position is not lost on those who know his origins. Here is a man who was born into the most powerless class in medieval society, yet who now wields influence over the very system that once constrained him. His success represents both the possibilities and limitations of medieval social mobility. While individual advancement was possible, it required exceptional circumstances and abilities, and it did not challenge the fundamental structure of society. William's personal life reflects his transformed circumstances. He marries the daughter of a minor knight, a union that would have been unthinkable in his youth, but is now appropriate to his elevated status. His children receive the education and opportunities that he had to fight for, born into a world of privilege that their grandfather could never have imagined. Yet William ensures that they understand their origins, that they appreciate the struggle and sacrifice that made their comfortable lives possible. As William enters his later years, he reflects on the journey that has taken him from peasant cottage to royal court. His success has not been without cost: the long hours, the constant pressure, the need to maintain his position through constant vigilance and performance. The peasant boy who once found security in the predictable rhythms of agricultural life now lives in a world of court intrigue and political uncertainty. Yet William's story is not unique in its broad outlines. The medieval world, for all its rigid hierarchies, produced many such individuals, men and women who rose through intelligence, determination, and fortunate circumstances to positions far beyond their birth. These stories of social mobility, while exceptional, reveal the dynamic nature of medieval society and the whole possibilities that existed for those with the ability and opportunity to seize them. William's legacy extends beyond his personal success. His administrative innovations, his legal reforms, and his approach to governance influenced the development of English institutions for generations to come. The bureaucratic systems he helps to create will evolve into the complex machinery of modern government, while his legal work contributes to the development of common law traditions that still shape legal systems today. In the quiet hours before sleep, as you consider William's remarkable journey, you might reflect on the factors that enabled his transformation. Medieval society, while often cruel and limiting, also possessed certain qualities that could reward merit and ability. The Church's emphasis on education, the feudal system's need for skilled administrators, and the gradual centralization of royal power all created opportunities for advancement that, while rare, were real. William's story also illuminates the broader themes of medieval peasant life. His success was built on the same qualities that enabled ordinary peasants to survive and thrive: careful attention to detail, patient accumulation of knowledge, and the ability to navigate complex social relationships. The difference lay not in the qualities themselves, but in the opportunities to apply them in new and different contexts. As we prepare to leave William's story and continue our journey through medieval peasant life, we carry with us a deeper understanding of the possibilities and limitations that define this distant world. His transformation from peasant to power broker reminds us that even in the most constrained circumstances, individual agency and determination can create extraordinary outcomes. The gentle rhythm of William's rise from obscurity to influence provides a soothing counterpoint to the harsh realities of medieval life. His story suggests that even in the darkest and most challenging times, human ingenuity and perseverance can create paths to dignity and success that transcend the circumstances of birth. Asterisk. Hidden mysteries, archaeological discoveries, and cultural practices. As we drift deeper into our exploration of medieval peasant life, let us turn our attention to the mysteries that lie buried beneath centuries of accumulated earth and time. The archaeological record speaks to us in whispers, revealing secrets about peasant culture that no written chronicle ever captured. These discoveries, emerging from forgotten village sites and abandoned farmsteads across Europe, paint a picture of medieval peasant life that is both more complex and more fascinating than the simple narratives often found in historical texts. Imagine yourself standing in a quiet field in the English countryside, where the only sounds are the gentle rustling of grass in the breeze and the distant call of a skylark. Beneath your feet, invisible to the casual observer, lie the remains of a medieval village that flourished for 3 centuries before being abandoned in the aftermath of the Black Death. This is Wareham Percy, one of England's most extensively excavated deserted medieval villages, and its buried secrets offer us an intimate glimpse into the daily lives of the peasant families who once called this place home. The excavations at Wareham Percy began in the 1950s and have continued for decades, each season revealing new layers of medieval life. The archaeologists work with infinite patience, carefully removing centuries of accumulated soil to expose the foundations of peasant houses, the boundaries of medieval gardens, and the intricate network of paths and boundaries that organized this rural community. Their tools are delicate small brushes, measuring instruments, and recording devices that capture every detail of what they uncover. As the excavation progresses, a remarkable picture emerges of peasant domestic life. The houses, far from being the crude hovels often described in historical accounts, reveal sophisticated adaptations to local conditions and climate. The foundations show evidence of careful planning and construction, with stone footings that provided stability and drainage, and post holes that once supported elaborate timber frameworks. The floors, made of carefully laid stone or beaten earth, show wear patterns that speak to centuries of daily use. One of the most intriguing discoveries at Wareham Percy is the evidence of how peasant families adapted their living spaces to the harsh realities of medieval winters. The excavations reveal that many houses were built with internal divisions that could be adjusted seasonally. Spaces that served as workshops in summer could be converted to additional living areas in winter, while areas used for food storage might be reconfigured to house animals during the coldest months. This flexibility speaks to a sophisticated understanding of thermal dynamics and resource management that challenges our assumptions about medieval peasant ingenuity. The artifacts recovered from these excavations tell stories that no written record could capture. In one house, archaeologists discovered a collection of small lead tokens, each bearing simple symbols: a cross, a star, a crude representation of an animal. These tokens, found hidden beneath a hearthstone, represent a mysterious aspect of peasant culture that has only recently begun to be understood. They appear to be pilgrimage badges, souvenirs of journeys to local shrines and holy sites that were far more common among the peasant population than historical records suggest. Picture these tokens in the hands of a medieval peasant family, each one representing a journey of faith and hope. Perhaps Agnes Miller, the wife in our imaginary family, walked 20 miles to a shrine dedicated to Saint Winifred, seeking divine intervention for her sick child. The token she received would have been more than a simple souvenir. It was a tangible connection to the sacred, a source of comfort and protection that she could hold and touch during the darkest moments of medieval life. The archaeological record also reveals the sophisticated agricultural practices that enabled peasant communities to survive and sometimes thrive in challenging environments. At sites across Europe, excavations have uncovered evidence of advanced field systems carefully engineered drainage networks, and innovative crop rotation practices that maximized agricultural productivity while maintaining soil fertility. These discoveries challenge the historical narrative that portrays medieval agriculture as primitive and inefficient. One particularly fascinating archaeological discovery comes from the village of Hendaman in Wales, where excavations have revealed a complex system of underground storage facilities that enabled peasant families to preserve food through the winter months. These cellars, carved directly into the bedrock and lined with stone, maintained consistent temperatures and humidity, levels that prevented spoilage and protected precious food stores from both rodents and human raiders. The sophistication of these storage systems suggests a level of engineering knowledge that was previously unrecognized among the peasant population. The mystery deepens when we consider the artifacts found within these storage areas. Alongside the expected remains of grain and preserved meat, archaeologists have discovered curious objects that seem to blend practical function with spiritual significance. Clay vessels decorated with intricate patterns, small metal objects that appear to be protective amulets, and carefully arranged collections of stones and bones that suggest ritualistic practices associated with food storage and preservation. These discoveries point to a rich spiritual life among medieval peasants that was far more complex than the simple Christian faith often described in historical accounts. The peasant worldview appears to have been a complex synthesis of Christian doctrine, ancient pagan traditions, and practical folk wisdom that governed every aspect of daily life. The rituals associated with food storage, for example, seem to have involved not just practical considerations of preservation and protection, but also spiritual practices designed to ensure the continued fertility of the land and the blessing of the harvest. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe reveals that peasant communities developed elaborate, seasonal rituals that marked the passage of time and the agricultural year. At the abandoned village of Dode in Kent, excavations have uncovered evidence of community gathering spaces where these rituals took place. The remains of large fire pits, surrounded by carefully arranged stones and filled with the burned remains of specific plants and animals, suggest ceremonies that combine practical activities like grain processing with spiritual observances that sought to ensure the community's continued prosperity. The artifacts associated with these ritual sites include objects that would have been precious to a peasant community: bronze bells, decorated pottery, and collections of exotic stones that must have been traded from distant regions. These discoveries suggest that peasant communities were not as isolated as often assumed, but participated in complex networks of trade and cultural exchange that connected them to the wider medieval world. One of the most mysterious aspects of peasant culture revealed through archaeology is the evidence of sophisticated astronomical knowledge. At several excavated sites, archaeologists have discovered stone alignments and marked observations points that suggest peasant communities were carefully tracking celestial movements and seasonal changes. These observations were not merely practical, though. They certainly served agricultural purposes, but appear to have been integrated into complex belief systems that connected earthly activities with cosmic rhythms. The discovery of peasant astronomical knowledge challenges many assumptions about medieval education and intellectual life. While formal education was indeed rare among the peasant population, these archaeological findings suggest that complex bodies of knowledge were transmitted through oral traditions and practical observation. The peasant farmer who could predict the weather, determine optimal planting times, and organize community activities around celestial events was demonstrating intellectual sophistication that matched or exceeded that of his more formally educated contemporaries. Archaeological excavations have also revealed evidence of peasant medical practices that were far more advanced than previously believed. At sites across Europe, archaeologists have uncovered remains of medicinal plants, surgical instruments, and even evidence of successful medical procedures. One particularly striking discovery comes from a peasant cemetery in northern France, where skeletal remains show evidence of sophisticated bone-setting techniques and successful surgical interventions that enabled individuals to survive serious injuries and live productive lives. The medical knowledge of peasant communities appears to have been primarily maintained and transmitted by women, who served as healers, midwives, and keepers of herbal wisdom. Archaeological evidence suggests that these women had access to extensive knowledge of plant medicine, surgical techniques, and diagnostic methods that were passed down through generations of practical experience. The healing practices they employed combined rational medical knowledge with spiritual beliefs about the causes and cures of illness. Perhaps most intriguingly, recent archaeological discoveries have revealed evidence of peasant literacy that was far more widespread than historical records suggest. At excavated sites across Europe, archaeologists have found evidence of writing materials, inscribed objects, and even crude books that suggest that reading and writing skills were present in peasant communities to a degree that was previously unsuspected. These discoveries include lead tablets inscribed with simple messages, pottery marked with ownership symbols, and even fragments of parchment that appear to contain peasant-authored texts. The implications of these literacy discoveries are profound. They suggest that the medieval world contained networks of communication and knowledge transmission that operated largely outside the official channels of church and state. Peasant communities appear to have maintained their own traditions of written communication, record-keeping, and literary expression that complemented and sometimes competed with the formal literary culture of the medieval elite as we explore these archaeological mysteries. We begin to understand that medieval peasant culture was far richer and more complex than the simple narratives of hardship and ignorance often found in historical accounts. The peasant communities revealed through careful excavation were sophisticated societies with complex belief systems, advanced technological knowledge, and rich cultural traditions that enabled them not just to survive, but to create meaningful and fulfilling lives within the constraints of their historical circumstances. The gentle rhythm of archaeological discovery continues to reveal new aspects of peasant life. Each artifact and structural remain adding another piece to the complex puzzle of medieval rural society. These discoveries remind us that history is not just the story of kings and battles, but also the story of ordinary people who lived, loved, worked, and died in circumstances that were both challenging and rewarding. As we prepare to leave these archaeological mysteries and continue our journey through medieval peasant life, we carry with us a deeper appreciation for the complexity and richness of medieval rural culture. The peasant communities revealed through careful excavation were not simple or primitive societies, but sophisticated cultures that had developed complex solutions to the challenges of medieval life. The mysteries uncovered by archaeological investigation provide a soothing counterpoint to the harsh realities of medieval existence. They remind us that even in the most difficult circumstances, human communities can create beauty, meaning, and cultural richness that transcends the immediate demands of survival. The peasant families who lived in these excavated villages were not just struggling to survive, they were creating lives of depth, complexity, and spiritual significance that deserve our respect and admiration.